Hare Krishna and good morning from ISKCON, Hong Kong. I'm Sravaniya Dasi. And today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 13, Text 43. Thank you for joining us today. Let's begin. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet. So the topic today is the puppet master, the player in control of the world. Yes, this is how Narada described the Supreme Lord, a player who distributes his things, right? Now here's some background. Maharaj Yudhishthira, whose enemy was never born, performed his daily morning duties and then entered the palace to pay respects to the elderly. However, he could not find his uncles or his aunt. That would be Dhritarashtra, Vidura, and Gandhari. Full of anxiety, King Yudhishthira turned to Sanjaya, Dhritarashtra's personal secretary, who was sitting there. But even he had no clue. Now, bear in mind, Sanjaya was granted divine vision and hearing by Vyasadeva. This is called Dura Shravana Darshanam in Sanskrit. It can see at a distance and hear at a distance. And this enabled him to see and hear the entire Kurukshetra war and the Bhagavad Gita dialogue in real time from the palace. And while seated far from the battlefield, Sanjaya narrated it to Dhritarashtra. Yet somehow or other at this moment, he could not at all understand where his master had gone. Then, as if right on cue, Sri Narada Muni, the divine messenger and powerful devotee of the Lord, appeared on the scene, carrying his musical instrument, the tamburu. He will fill Yudhishthira in on the situation, and he will instruct him in spiritual understanding. Now let's explore today's verse and purport. Text 43. Yata krido paskaranang sangyoga vigama viha ichaya kriditu syatang katai veshe chayanidam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Sri Narada Muni said, as a player sets up and disperses his playthings according to his own sweet will, so the supreme will of the Lord brings men together and separates them. So Narada is referring to how Yudhishthira is now separated from his beloved Vidura and Dhritarashtra and Gandhari. Here's purport. We must know for certain that the particular position in which we are now set up is an arrangement of the supreme will in terms of our own acts in the past. The Supreme Lord is present as localized Paramatma in the heart of every living being, as it is said in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text 23. And therefore, he knows everything of our activities in every stage of our lives. He rewards the reactions of our actions by placing us in some sort of particular place. A rich man gets his son born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but the child who came as the rich man's son deserved such a place. Therefore, he is placed there by the will of the Lord. And at a particular moment, when the child has to be removed from that place, he is also carried by the will of the Supreme, even if the child or the father does not wish to be separated from the happy relation. The same thing happens in the case of a poor man also. Neither rich man nor poor man has any control over such meetings or separations of living beings. The example of a player and his playthings should not be misunderstood. One may argue that since the Lord is bound to award the reactionary results of our own actions, the example of a player cannot be applied. But this is not so. We must always remember that the Lord is the supreme will, and he is not bound by any law. Generally, the law of karma is that one is awarded the result of one's own actions. But in special cases, by the will of the Lord, such resultant actions are changed also. But this change can be effected by the will of the Lord only, and no other. Therefore, the example of the player cited in this verse is quite appropriate, for the supreme will is absolutely free to do whatever he likes. And because he is all perfect, there is no mistake in any of his actions or reactions. In other words, everything Krishna does is good for everyone all the time. Right. These changes of resultant actions are especially rendered by the Lord when a pure devotee is involved. It is assured in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, texts 30 and 31, that the Lord saves a pure devotee who has surrendered unto him without reservation from all sorts of reactions of sins, and there's no doubt about this. There are hundreds of examples of reactions changed by the Lord in the history of the world. If the Lord is able to change the reactions of one's past deeds, then certainly he is not himself bound by any action or reaction of his own deeds. He is perfect and transcendental to all laws. Jai Srila Prabhupada. That's the purport. Right. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Nami Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Sunyavari Bhasi Charitar. So, if the living being is not in control, the question arises, who is pulling the strings? Supreme Lord's illusory energy Maya is the puppet master for those who have no interest in serving the Lord. Do good, get good. Otherwise, watch out. She delivers the results of one's actions. However, for over 40 years of my experience teaching yoga, it has become evident that this idea of karma and reincarnation is not widely accepted by most people, especially in the Western countries, because the bottom line is that we are each getting what we deserve. Now, this acceptance of responsibility for one's own suffering is hard to swallow for most. They prefer to see themselves as victims, and they're encouraged to do so by popular culture. A persistent mindset where individuals blame external circumstances or others for their problems to avoid accountability. There's even a tendency to reject solutions to problems, because that means letting go of the victim identity and all the attention and sympathy that comes along with it. This is certainly a sad state of affairs. In his instructions to Maharaj Yudhishthira, Sri Narada says something that is most noteworthy in text 47. The weak are the subsistence of the strong, and the general rule holds that one living being is food for another. Jivo jivasya jivanam. In the purport, Prabhupada notes this: the living beings who have come to the material world against the will of the Supreme Being are under the control of a supreme power called Maya Shakti, the deputed agent of the Lord. And this Daivi Maya is meant to pinch the conditioned souls by threefold miseries. one of which is explained here in this verse. The weak are the subsistence of the strong. Subsistence means maintain. All right. So there are a lot of wannabe controllers here in this cloud of matter. In the film in 1999 called The Matrix, when asked by Morpheus if he believes in fate, Neo replies, "No, because I don't like the idea that I'm not in control of my life." This quote highlights Neo's rejection of karmic predestination, or fate. He desires to act as the one in charge of his journey. He wants to be free to do as he chooses. However, as Ayn Rand famously said, we can ignore reality, but we cannot ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. Yep, the results of his actions are precisely what will determine Neo's future fate. Yet due to willful ignorance, he cannot see this. This idea that I'm the controller, I'm the owner, I'm the enjoyer. Yes, this is the reason why we made it to the material world in the first place. Speaking of the control syndrome, there are those in government organizations who even try to control the weather. Attempts to control the weather, or weather modification, are scientifically backed efforts to alter local patterns. Common methods include cloud seeding. That's using silver iodide or dry ice to boost the rain or make more snow, and techniques to reduce the hail or fog. So they've been at this for a long time. In 1947, something called Project Cirrus, they tried to redirect a storm off the coast of Florida, but they were only able to artificially redirect it, and it demolished parts of Georgia. I just noted recently that Florida passed a Senate Bill 56, which became effective in July last year. It was banning geoengineering and intentional weather modification activities to protect public health and the environment. The law prohibits releasing chemicals or substances into the atmosphere to affect temperature, weather, or sunlight, classifying violations as 3-degree felonies. However, the legislation has faced criticism and opposition. The opponents are arguing that it is based on conspiracy theories rather than scientific evidence. Another rain-making attempt, Operation Popeye, that happened back in 1967 to 72, was long-running. It was used as a weapon during the Vietnam War to induce rain to impede the enemy. The operation aimed to extend the monsoon season over the Ho Chi Minh Trail to disrupt North Vietnamese supply routes by increasing rainfall and causing mudslides. But neither the volume of induced rainfall nor the extent of the area affected could be precisely predicted or controlled. And it eventually destroyed the place with floods and unintentionally killed many people. An official record states, in one instance, the rainfall continued as the cloud moved eastward across the Vietnam border and inundated the U.S. Special Forces with 9 inches of rain in 4 hours. That's a lot. In other words, cloud seeding missions cannot only go wrong, but in some cases, totally backfire. The World Meteorological Organization, WMO, encourages sound scientific research, but it admits that controlling weather remains a complex, sometimes unsuccessful attempt. Can I translate that for you? It means they don't know what they're doing, okay? Now, these Jiva souls who are pretending to be Isras are definitely not in control, and despite their endless taxpayer-funded endeavors, never will be. The Lord Krishna instructs Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita chapter 13, text 30, that all activities take place in the unified field of material energy, and that spiritual realization is possible when one understands that he is not the doer. This is what Krishna says. One who can see that all activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and sees that the self does nothing, actually sees. God is fulfilling the desires of the conditioned souls here in the material world. But along with that comes birth, death, old age, and disease. And no one wants any of these complications, but there is no avoiding them. In text 44, purport, Srila Prabhupada says, the actual fact is that every living being is an eternal part and parcel of the Supreme Being. And his constitutional position, that means his innate nature, is subordinate cooperative service, either in his conditional material existence or in his liberated position of full knowledge and eternity. The living entity is eternally under the control of the Supreme Lord. So even in liberation. Wow. Now, when Krishna takes charge of his pure devotee, let's look at that. In a lecture in 1973, Srila Prabhupada said, Rake Krishna Mareke, Mare Krishna Rakeke. If Krishna desires to kill somebody, nobody can save him. And if he wants to save somebody, nobody can kill him. The Lord can save a pure devotee who has surrendered unto him without reservation from all sorts of sinful reactions. And this is often called divine intervention. Saved by the Lord. By his will, Lord Krishna is able to change the reactions of one's past deeds. Today, in this purport is mentioned, there are hundreds of examples of reactions changed by the Lord in the history of the world. Let me give you two examples that come to mind. Number one, saving Srila Prabhupada. So Satsvarupa Das gives this account. On the Jaladuta voyage to America, Prabhupada twice experienced heart attacks. And he continued to suffer strokes and many other maladies while discharging his strenuous duties on behalf of Krishna. I can recall being with Prabhupada at Beth Israel Hospital in New York City in 1967 when the doctors were running him through a series of tests after he had experienced a severe stroke. Later, as Prabhupada sat in his hotel room that evening with a few disciples at his feet, he reminisced about how he had come to America in 1965 and had suffered 2 heart attacks at sea. Prabhupada said, they say that anyone who gets a 3rd heart attack, they must expire. I had 2 attacks on the ship, and then in New York, a 3rd one. Paralyzed. Left side was paralyzed. I do not know how I was saved. And one girl, that captain's wife, she studied astrology. She said, Swami, if you can survive your 70th year, then you will live for 100 years. Srila Prabhupada and his disciples laughed. Prabhupada continued, so, somehow or other, I have survived my 70th year. They say I will live for 100 years, but 70th year was severe. 3 heart attacks and paralysis. And I was without any family. At that time, none of you were with me. I was alone. I wasn't dependent on anyone, but on the ship, I saw that Krishna was going to save me. I was going for his mission. Here's more from Dinatarani Devi Dasi in her book, Yamuna Devi, A Life of Unalloyed Devotion. She writes, on Memorial Day, May 30th, 1967, in New York, Srila Prabhupada suffered a stroke in New York. The prognosis was grave. Jamuna writes, Swamiji had sent us a telegram which said, if you pray to Lord Jagannath, and if he hears your prayers, I will stay. Otherwise, I may go. Srila Prabhupada taught his devotees in New York the prayers to Lord Nrsingadev and asked them to request the Lord to allow him to remain alive longer, to spread the fledgling mission of Krishna consciousness. My spiritual master has not finished his work, so dear Lord Krishna, please let him finish. This was the prayer Prabhupada requested for them to say. And within a week, on June 5th, 1967, Srila Prabhupada wrote to the devotees in San Francisco expressing his gratitude for their prayers. He said, I am so much obliged to you for your prayers to Krishna to save my life. Due to your sincere and ardent prayers, Krishna has saved my life. I was to die on Tuesday, certainly, but because you prayed sincerely, I am saved. Now I'm improving gradually and coming to original condition. Now I hope I can meet you again and chant with you Hare Krishna. That must be the best example. And if one is not even a pure devotee, but renders some service, Lord Krishna can step in. Here's an amazing story. A little spiritual merit for Donald Trump. This is by Krishna Gopal Das, written some years ago. Way back in 1976, the ISKCON devotees in New York were determined to build 3 huge Ratha Yatra carts and hold the respective festival in the most important city of the world. The challenge was to find a place in Manhattan where the carts could be built and then transferred to the festival route. Open real estate in Manhattan is very rare indeed. Toshan Krishna, he took it upon himself to find such a place that would work. The Pennsylvania Railroad yards were the logical choice, and in fact, probably the only place that would work. So without reservation, Toshan Krishna approached the then corporate company owners of the area with a proposal to let the devotees use the space to build the carts. Much to his dismay, he was told that they were in process of selling the property, and it would be solely up to the new owner, now under contract. That new owner was none other than Donald J. Trump. So Toshan then wrote a proposal which was passed on to this noted real estate mogul. Now, obtaining the parade permit for Fifth Avenue was considered a miracle, but finding an empty site near the parade route to build the large wooden carts was proving to be an even greater challenge. Things seemed dim at that point. However, much to Toshan's surprise and prayers, he was contacted and asked to come to the Four Seasons restaurant in Manhattan, where all the details of the real estate transaction were to be concluded. Thereupon, he was given the signed permission agreement. It was signed by none other than Donald J. Trump, with permission to use the open rail yards to build the Ratha Yatra carts for the most famous ISKCON festival. Trump could have easily rejected the proposal, but he did not. Why he did not, at this time, only he and Lord Krishna know. Perhaps we'll find out sometime in the future. All we can honestly do is thank Toshan Krishna for his determined effort, and now President Trump for his generosity. Jai Lord Jagannath. So that's what Krishna Gopal Das wrote. Now, 48 years later, from July 7th through 15th in 2024, the Jagannath Ratha Yatra was again being celebrated. During that time, on July 14th, the assassination attempt on Donald Trump occurred at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, and Lord Jagannath returned favor to Donald Trump by saving his life. Here are excerpts from an article in the Economic Times India, written on the 15th July, before Trump won the re-election in November. After narrowly surviving an assassination attempt, former U.S. President Donald Trump attributed his survival to divine intervention, urging Americans to stay resilient. The front runner in the U.S. presidential race was struck in the ear by a gunman during a campaign rally in Pennsylvania. The attack on Trump and his survival coinciding with the Jagannath Ratha Yatra celebrations, during the celebrations, okay, in a different place, but the time, had led many in ISKCON to see this as an instance of divine intervention, bringing back memories of Trump's connection with the festival nearly 50 years ago. It was then that Trump emerged as an unexpected ally. So a young 30-year-old Trump had come to the devotees' aid by providing his recently purchased railway yard free of charge for building Lord Jagannath's carts. Love him or hate him, Donald J. Trump received Krishna's special mercy for his generosity. Okay. So, God loves everyone. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 29, Lord Krishna tells Arjuna, I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all. But whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. In the purport, Prabhupada writes, the Lord claims that every living entity in whatever form is his son, and as such, he provides everyone with a generous supply of necessities of life. He is just like a cloud which pours rain all over, regardless of whether it falls on rock or land or water. But for his devotees, he gives specific attention. Such devotees are mentioned here. They're always in Krishna consciousness, and therefore, they're always transcendently situated in Krishna. The very phrase, Krishna consciousness, suggests that those who are in such consciousness are living transcendentalists, situated in him. The Lord says here distinctly, Mayi te, in me. Naturally, as a result, the Lord is also in them. This is reciprocal. This also explains the words, Asti na priya ye bhajanti. Whoever surrenders unto me, proportionately I take care of him. This transcendental reciprocation exists both because the Lord and the devotee are conscious. Then Prabhupada gives an interesting example. When a diamond is set in a golden ring, it looks very nice. The gold is glorified, and at the same time, the diamond is glorified. The Lord and the living entity eternally glitter. And when a living entity becomes inclined to the service of the Supreme Lord, he looks like gold. The Lord is a diamond, and so this combination is very nice. That combination is possible through bhakti yoga. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschasmi tatvata. No other process will do. So, carry on with your sadhana. Keep chanting and reading Prabhupada's books. Krishna will take you home. That's it for today's session. Thank you for listening. For ISKCON Hong Kong, I'm Sravaniya Dasi. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Shri Gaura Nitai ki jai. Hari Hari Bol.